The sun is setting over the Golden Horn here in Istanbul, and the sun is setting on my adventure across Turkey. This is Josh Friedman wrapping up a trip across Turkey from east to west, and as you can now see, I am in Istanbul, standing on the Galata Bridge, which, as I mentioned in a previous video, is one of my favorite places in the world to catch the sunset, and you can get a glimpse of why that is right now. This bridge that you're looking at is called Haliç, or Golden Horn. It is the metro bridge. The Istanbul metro goes across it. Here in the Golden Horn Inlet, beside the Bosphorus Straits, in a separate video I explained in depth the geography and the history of this region. So right now I'm going to recap a little bit of the past week and a half, my trip around Turkey, which was a trip that started up in the mountains in eastern Turkey by the Ishak Pasha Palace. I dipped a little south of there to Lake Van, another beautiful area where I visited the Armenian Cathedral atop Akdamir Island. I then went into the hub of the southeast, Diyarbakir, before heading up to Ankara for a very prominent event in geopolitics. I covered the Turkish constitutional referendum from Ankara, and I'll discuss a little bit more on the implications of that in a minute. Before I headed to the Aegean coast, where I visited Turkey's third city, Izmir, a beautiful spot that is really being missed out on by tourists at the moment, and I'll discuss a little bit more on that as well in a minute. And I'm rounding out my trip here in Istanbul. With the referendum taking place, Turkey really has been a divided nation. The referendum pitted people into yes and no camps, which are basically for Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and against Turkish President Erdogan, as well as for a more Islamic society or against a more Islamic society. And Turks are pretty divided on those fronts, albeit the yes won, and it appears that Turkey as a whole is going to shift a little bit, if not a lot, but at least for now a little bit more away from the West and a little bit more away from the secular roots of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk and toward Islam having a little more of an influence in society. As you travel around Turkey right now, it's very noticeable that the number of Western tourists is diminishing. There's still many people visiting Turkey, especially from the Arab and Muslim worlds, but the terror attacks over the past couple years, as well as the political turmoil and some of that having to do with last year's coup attempts, that has scared off many tourists. And it's unfortunate because, as you can see from this trip, Turkey is a remarkably beautiful country, whether it be the snow-capped mountains in the east, any of Turkey's vast coastline, or even in the center of the country, some of the beautiful terrain that unfortunately I skipped over. Well, Turkey really is a beautiful country and really is an incredible tourist destination. And at the moment, it's an incredible tourist destination at a reduced price. So if you can stomach the risk of there being a terror attack or some wild political incident, which that risk exists, albeit it's very small chance that you would get caught up in something like that. But if you can stomach the risks, there's probably no better time than now to visit Turkey. While I was in Izmir, actually, I ran into a Turkish man and I was having a conversation about travel in Turkey, and he said Turkey is the most beautiful country in the world. I asked him if he had traveled to every country in the world, and he said that he had not even traveled outside of Turkey. And that sentiment might be a little representative of Turkish society, Turkish sentiments. There's an element of blind faith and national pride and nationalism, but there is certainly at least a kernel of truth, if not more, to the notion that Turkey is an incredibly beautiful country. So I'm very glad that I got to take this trip across the country. I'm grateful that you have joined me on some, if not all of it. It's been an experience in which I've gone to see lots of elements of Turkish society. In addition to the beauty, I've gone to see firsthand some of the conflicts, past and present. While in the southeast, we got a glimpse of the Kurdish conflict, and part of that is the intense security presence, which I did not really show you. I wasn't filming police and tanks and checkpoints, but that is a problem if you're going to visit some, if not all of the country. It's something to be aware of with the current state of emergency and the fighting between Turkish forces and Kurdish militants, that there is a very intense security atmosphere, and that will certainly scare away many visitors. Also on this trip, we discussed a little bit of the past Armenian conflict, as well as issues with Greece and the Aegean, but an overarching theme to this has been the beauty that lies across Anatolia and here in Istanbul, and whether Turkey shifts west or east, this being the west and this being the east and Asia, might as well give you a glimpse, since we are basically on the dividing line between Europe and Asia and east and west. Well, whether Turkey shifts west or east, whether it becomes more of a Islamic society as opposed to a secular society, whatever its political and religious orientation is, it's an incredible country and an incredible and central geographic location with history that is well worth exploring. And once again, thank you for joining me on this trip. I hope you enjoyed it, and güle güle from Turkey. Goodbye.